I'm going to ask Adam to share with this table.
Adam Kleinberg from Traction. We talked a lot about the conflux of SAPs and Accentures and these other companies that are kind of joining the mix. And a comment was made: we're not going to lose our clients. They're not going to figure this out, right? It's just a couple of points on the buy for us to do that on their behalf. Certainly, these companies like Accentures, they're pretty buttoned up. They develop processes for a living, and they're going to make us all more efficient. But I think the missing link, the thing that hasn't been talked about much, is creative, and that creative is really the differentiator. And the Old Spice guy, doesn't come out of a spreadsheet, and it doesn't come out of one of these companies or this chart, right? It comes from creative thought. I told an anecdote. I'd been at another conference and I saw Scott Bedbury, who's the CMO of Nike and Starbucks, speak. And I said, we sell brand experiences and innovation, and we get challenged with this ROI question. How are you going to prove the ROI on it? And the comment he made was that fully half of the things that we should be doing for our brands are not predictably quantifiable. So, that being the case, we need to make sure that we don't eliminate that other half. If every brand out there is focusing on optimizing downward, it's going to be the ones that break out and do something different that are really going to pull ahead.
So we're rushing to the lowest common denominator. Any other questions? Kevin?
Hi, Jeff Weitzman from BuySite. One of the things we discussed here, this is sort of a two-parter, but it's related, is the lack of resources and manpower on the agency side to filter all of us suppliers and all of the vendors and look at everything that's out there. So one skill that they'll have to learn, I think, is to be able to handle the number of opportunities that are out there. And then along with that, is the ability to work with those partners to do the analysis and create the value for our mutual client, the ultimate advertiser. 10 years ago, when the digital marketplace really started heating up, a lot of the publishers went around the agencies and went direct because they found it to be a bottleneck, that the agencies weren't really prepared to do digital media. And they went around them and went to the clients and ultimately came back to working with the agencies, especially as the agencies ramped up and reestablished their hold on the client relationships. And that's been a really good thing. But if this landscape leads to frustration on the supplier side again, where it's impossible to get things done with agencies, that's a danger, because there are those other vendors, the SAPs and the Accentures and the Oracles out there, ready to do these kinds of integrated systems for the brands. And this time around, there's a possibility that those brands could handle it, could integrate all those things themselves and get the kind of analysis they need from the marketplace. So one of the things our table urged is that the agencies devote the resources to looking at, working with, and partnering with the right suppliers to make sure that they're still supplying the value to their clients.
I like Jeff's comment because we've had that conversation. I mean, we've had those conversations at Red Bull, and I don't want to take that responsibility on now. But we've absolutely had those conversations with really large players about working directly and kind of creating our own ecosystem. So it's interesting because if this becomes easier via the companies on that chart, it's definitely a real outcome, and it's going to be important for agencies to be able to handle, integrate, and communicate this stuff with the clients.
Okay, Terry, I'm going to pass it to you to close out on that question number 2.
Great. So we had a lot of good feedback there, and here's some points that I think fit in with my sort of wrap to this. We heard about creative from a couple of people, and I will tell you that it doesn't matter whether we're talking about art or science, creative works. Good creative works offline, good creative works online. Any ad format, any media channel, good creative is always going to deliver better results. So let's just take that as a given. That's a blanket that applies no matter what. It's necessary, but unfortunately not sufficient. What I would say is, in this new world, you need someone the skill sets that understands the dynamics. What do I mean by that? Advertising has often been thought of as a discretionary spend item. Okay, how are we doing this year? Should we spend more on advertising? No, it's a bad year, let's cut back on advertising. People think they can throttle it. But I submit that when we move from more of an art world to a science world, where things like attribution, where things like optimization become more of the norm, that advertising actually moves up the income statement. It goes from a discretionary expense to maybe a cost of goods sold. In fact, all the way through, if you can really tell, when you get the purchase funnel fully connected, I submit that it could be viewed as a revenue driver. So people will go in and say, yeah, I am going to spend this money in order to generate that amount of revenue. And once people start thinking about advertising in that context, we all win. Now, what are the skill sets required? Whether you're on the agency side or on the publisher side, you need people that understand those kind of conundrums. So if I was like, say a premium publisher, like, Time Inc., for example, I'd want to bring on someone who really understood this. Someone like a Randy Rothenberg or something for Chief Digital Officer. Ladies and gentlemen, announcing Time Inc.'s new Chief Digital Officer, Randy Rothenberg. Case in point. Someone mentioned, attribution. This is really key, and this is one of the areas on that chart that I get the most excited about. And it starts with, companies that are analyzing data. Sure, we all analyze data and look at analytics and figure out, what worked, but it's very forensic, okay? Verifying what ad got placed, seeing what worked, optimizing audiences. The reality is, there is, cause and effect out there, and companies that are trying to solve the attribution problem and then plugging those results back into media planning, this is where it gets really exciting. And again, to my point about it being a revenue driver as opposed to a discretionary expense, if you can solve that riddle, and there's lots of companies doing some interesting analytics to address that, then the sky's the limit, right? That's the keys to the Holy Grail. Not only will you solve it in digital, you'll take those learnings and apply them to TV, print, and radio and other media channels. So I think that's really good. Someone who understands the dynamics. Second is someone who understands these technologies. Now, a couple of people made the point, we can't do it ourselves. We need to partner. That's good. That's fine. The ground is moving so fast and so dynamic that I would suggest partnering with folks who have focused on these capabilities is a good thing. Ultimately, however, to my previous point about the systems integrators, and to Brendan's point, that someone needs someone who understands those technologies really well, and the application of them may be looking to disintermediate the agency. And so it's really important to not just understand them, ask the questions, as someone suggested, but to, in fact, maybe integrate those technologies closer. And I would suggest that it's either understand the dynamics and understand the technologies, or the third skill set I would suggest is resume skills. And I'll leave you with that.
Don't scare them.
I don't want to scare you. I don't want to leave it on a negative note. The answer is an enormous opportunity. You guys are in the pole position. It's all yours for the taking.
Thank you very much. We have time for some Q&A. Anyone, questions? Oh, come on. Okay, we've got one over there. Terrific. Stand and say your name, please. Where you're from.
Ed Carey, Undertone. Terry, is there a VC bubble?
Wow. Is there a VC bubble? To all of my clients out there, and hell no. Well, again, I think there's a lot of money in the venture community, and so I think there's too much money, chasing too many deals. We hear these pitches of companies, and it's like, go back. What's your value proposition, or how are you distinctive? And what's phenomenal to me is I hear these pitches, and there's some very, very cool companies I get really excited about when I hear about them. Others, I say, really? really? You think you can get funded like that? And then they do. So I think that kind of answers your question. It's a little bubbly. I would say that this doesn't feel like 2000, where we're sort of driving off into oblivion. It's certainly heady, and then from a financing perspective, it's certainly heady, because I think more companies are getting financed than will either A, prove to have sustainable business models, or B, get acquired. And I would say that on the flip side, the M&A environment is strong, but not a bubble. Every one of the transactions I did this year, whether it was Ziff Davis or Invite Media or Dapper or a couple others that are be announced hopefully in the next couple of weeks before the year end, every one of the acquirers is not doing this on a whim. They're doing deep diligence. They're talking to clients. They're doing the tech reviews. So it does not feel like 1999 or 2000 from an M&A perspective. From a financing perspective, it's robust.
We have a question in the back.
Terence, John Durham, have you considered or doing your Sana ecosystem in the whole agency environment with all the agency services well beyond the holding company, all the different kinds of people? Because I think that would be as interesting a map as what you've displayed today, just the people who play in that entire agency space. Is there something out there like that?
Well, John, I totally agree that that's necessary. Just a footnote on this chart. I developed I am, after all, an investment banker. I'm not a consultant or an agency person. I actually created the chart for my own purposes to sort of figure out who does what, and it was all created for the purposes of consolidation. I mean, the chart is incomplete. It misses many swaths of the ecosystem, but by and large, those companies are already owned by larger companies. So they're from a consolidation standpoint, they're not that interesting. But I'd be happy to partner with somebody if they want to help me produce that aspect of the chart.
Okay, thank you very much. That was a lively start to the summit. Thank you, Kathleen, Brendan, and Terry.